This is what I made as a personal chef in Beverly Hills. Before we get started, I wanted to show off this new knife I received from Messermeister. Please don't ever put your kitchen knives in the dishwasher. It'll damage the blade and it'll damage the handle. This is their Kawashima 8-inch chef's knife. It's pretty. And I love the K-tip on it. Almost all my favorite knives have a K-tip. The steel is SG2, which means it's got good edge retention and you don't really have to worry about it rusting like carbon knives. It's gonna be great as a workhorse knife that won't need to be babied. All my carbon knives are really thin, so I'm happy to have a knife that I can use for rougher tasks. My clients have a guest coming today and he's going to have filet while they want grilled lamb chops. I always change up the marinade, and this time I made it with lemon zest, juice, this shawarma spice mix that contains coriander, cumin, paprika, and turmeric. Then I also added some dried mint, olive oil, grated garlic, mix it all up and give it a taste. I combine it with all my lamb chops, massaging all that marinade into them, and I seasoned each chop with salt. I always prefer seasoning after I rub in the marinade to control how much salt each piece gets. The fillets are going to be seasoned again by this black garlic and shiitake mushroom salt. I've actually really been enjoying it. I also really love playing around with different kinds of vinegars, so I picked up this barrel-aged Cabernet Sauvignon wine vinegar. I gave it a taste and yep, it tastes like vinegar, but you can definitely taste the flavor of the barrel aging. I combine it with dried mint, honey to balance out the acidity, and extra virgin olive oil to make a sweet and tangy vinaigrette. For the salad, I'll be putting on top of the grilled lamb. I add thinly sliced shallots, gutted cucumbers, and cherry tomatoes. This is going to really brighten up the flavor of the lamb. The young gentleman coming for lunch enjoys his compound butters, so I made one with caramelized onions, Dijon mustard, Worcestershire sauce, smoked paprika, lemon zest, and fresh lemon juice. It did get a little too warm, so I put it over an ice bath and I just beat it up a little bit until it firmed up. I also added a bit of fresh chopped thyme. One of the veg today is broccoli, which I blanched in salted water and shocked. One of them will be having it just like this, and the other two will be having it roasted. The other veg is going to be these baby yellow squash that I slice in half, score, season, and throw on the grill. All that's left to do is grill the proteins, medium rare on the steaks and rare for the lamb chops. For the lamb plates, I add a piece of grilled zucchini, some of the eggplant parm from the night before since they wanted to eat it again, roasted broccoli, the lamb chops, and the summery bright tomato cucumber shallot salad on top of the lamb. And for the fillet plate, lots of the same veg, the eggplant parm, the fillets, and that compound butter. Would you rather have the fillet or the lamb? I'm going to teach you how to break down a chicken. If you're a veteran or can easily break one down, this isn't for you. Keep swiping. But if you've never broken down a chicken or the idea freaks you out, maybe this will help. I think a lot of videos online go a little bit too quick because the person is already so good at it. I think instead of just following what a video shows you, the best way to get good at breaking down a chicken is by understanding the anatomy of the chicken. The first thing I like to do with my chicken is get it completely dry. This is going to prevent it from sliding around on your cutting board. So pat it dry inside and out. We don't want any juices coming out of the cavity while you're doing your thing. Then make sure you have a landing pad for your chicken pieces, like a sheet pan. The way you break down a chicken will always depend on how you're cooking and serving it. If I was serving airline breast, I would leave the wing attached to the breast, but my clients don't eat the wings, so I'm going to remove them first. If you're just starting out, don't be afraid to use shallow cuts just to get an idea of where all the bones and tendons are. Don't rush it. I pull out the wing and just use shallow cuts until you see the point where the two bones meet at the shoulder. Gently cut in between and it should easily go through. And same with the other side. Just gentle, shallow cuts, letting your knife do the work. You shouldn't be using too much force. With the legs facing you, I cut the skin that connects the breast to the thighs, grab the leg, pull them back so that the bone pops out from the hip. You'll be able to clearly see that happening, and you'll be able to feel it. I usually pop both legs at the same time, but we're here to learn the anatomy and understand why we're doing what we're doing. To make it easier to remove the breast later on, I do recommend removing the legs first. If you look at the back, you'll see these little lumps where the thighs meet the torso. Those are the oysters, and we want to make sure we get those. I grab the leg, fold it back to expose the oyster, and cut it out. It is being cupped by bones, so you do have to maneuver your knife a little bit to get it out. Again, take your time and feel it out. Since we already popped out the thigh bone from the hip joint, the only thing connecting the leg to the chicken is flesh. So just get your knife in between the joint and the torso, cutting it as close to the body as you can to get as much meat as possible. And that's your leg and thigh. Same thing, repeat with the other side. Don't try to copy videos of other chefs doing it who go really quickly. Start with shallow cuts until you know your way around the chicken. You won't have to do this part once you're more comfortable with breaking down a chicken, but for now, to make sure we have a flat base to remove the breast, use scissors and cut out the spine. I then gently and firmly push down on the center of the chest to snap some of that rib cage so that it lays flat. This way you don't have to worry about your chicken torso rolling around while you're trying to cut it. Now feel for the sternum or the keel bone that runs down between the breasts. Cut an incision to one side of the bone, down the rib cage, and on top is a V-shaped wishbone, so make sure you cut alongside that as well. Just run your knife right up against that rib cage, trying to get as much of that meat as possible. And there's your breast. Flip it over and you do the same thing. Again, shallow, delicate cuts so you can really learn where everything is. Once you're more confident, you can start using longer, more precise strokes, but until then, take it slow. Now for the legs, there is this magical line of fat that exists on every chicken leg. It'll show you exactly where the joint of the leg is. You can also use your finger to feel the joint. So just use your knife and slide it right down. It's very easy. At this point, your chicken's all broken down. And there you go. You got 2 wings, 2 breasts, 2 thighs, and 2 legs. And the only way to get better is practice. Good luck. We have guests coming over and they requested chicken, something light and healthy. I showed you how to break down a chicken in my last video, so now you can replicate this at home as well. I decided to make an Italian salsa verde for the chicken. It's herbaceous, bright, acidic, and it's so versatile. So this part is annoying, but I like to pick my parsley. The leaves have a great fresh flavor, but I find the stems to be on the bitter side, and I'm very sensitive to bitter flavors. It is time consuming and it kinda sucks, but it does make a big difference in the final product, so suck it up. I usually freeze them to use for soups or stock. Another thing about me is that I never chop soft herbs. I just bunch them up, roll them, and slice one time through. Basically a chiffonade. Your herbs will stay green longer and won't get all wet. Just my personal preference. I also like to make large batches of this because it does have so many uses besides just being a sauce for the chicken. You're gonna see that in my future videos. For the salsa verde, I combine lemon zest, a lot of fresh lemon juice, grated garlic, shallots, rinsed and chopped capers. I had leftover chive oil, so I added that, chiffonade sage, basil, a ton of parsley, extra virgin olive oil, dried oregano, chives, and salt to season. And then I let those flavors marry while I finish my prep. I slowly start rendering out the chicken skin while I prep the vegetables. Today is broccoli and roasted carrots. I also got this beautiful full-fat ricotta from Bellwether Farms, which is my absolute favorite. I whipped it up with some lemon zest, juice, and honey for the roasted carrots. And to serve, I placed the Italian salsa verde on the bottom of the plate, whipped citrus honey ricotta, roasted carrots, charred broccoli, a bit of the pan-roasted chicken thigh, breast, and this specific person got the wing. The salsa verde will balance out the sweetness of the ricotta and carrots, brighten up that charred broccoli, and of course make that simple roasted chicken just a bit more interesting. It's just simple, clean cooking. A lot of people ask if I get paid more on the days that my clients have guests, and the answer is no, I do not. While it is true that the days that they have guests are extra busy and more work, there are also a lot of days that are pretty chill. There are days where all I have to do is make a salad, soup, or even just fried eggs with toast, so the days balance out. Thankfully, this was one of those days. After breaking down my last chicken, I finally have enough to make a large batch of chicken stock. Since I knew that I was mostly going to use it for soup, I roasted my chicken bones to add a bit of color and more of that roasted flavor. So I laid them down on a sheet pan and into the oven. For the soup, I sliced a bunch of onions and threw them into a heavy bottom pot with some olive oil and a bit of butter. Also a little bit of baking soda and salt to get that caramelizing as fast as possible. I only do this when I know the onions will be blended, since the baking soda also kind of turns them into mush. While those are going, I thinly sliced my clean zucchini with the mandolin. I like to do this so that the zucchini will cook evenly. With the bones nicely roasted, I just throw them into a large stock pot with filtered water and just whatever veg and herbs I have laying around. I don't usually buy specific vegetables to throw in them. Here I got some leftover chopped and sliced onions, a carrot, garlic, a rogue shallot, some old celery, and thyme, letting that simmer for as long as I can. Once my onions were beautifully caramelized, I crushed some garlic, gently toasted them, and threw in my sliced zucchini, adding a bit more salt. I always like to season gently throughout the process. It absolutely makes a difference compared to just seasoning it all at once in the end. I'm cooking out all that water in the zucchini to concentrate the flavors, caramelize the sugars, and so I can add more flavor via my chicken stock. Then I add some fresh thyme, which goes beautifully with the zucchini and onions, and I cooked it for another hour or so before it looked like this. Then I just added some of that chicken stock I have going before heating it up together and blending it until completely smooth. I personally like to add more butter to this as it blends, but we're going to keep this a little healthier for my clients. While she likes her soup silky smooth, he prefers some texture and a bit of bite in his, so I just cubed some zucchini and gave those a gentle saute with salt until golden brown and cooked through. We got some nice figs from the farmer's market, so I just quartered them, placed them on the plate, and gently arranged thinly sliced prosciutto. This would be great with some burrata, honey, saba or balsamic, and with some nice crusty bread, but they like it just like this. Served with a hot cup of zucchini soup, and that's dinner. I'll see you tomorrow. It looks like summer is fully upon us now that sweet corn is at the farmer's market. Sometimes corn can be tough on my client's stomach, so I decided to make a nice soup out of these guys. I shucked them, removed the kernels using that method that I've shown you guys before. If you guys haven't seen that video, I basically just use a large bowl with a smaller upside down bowl in the center, putting paper towels to keep my cob in place, and just cut down the sides of the cob and let the bowl catch them. It's very useful if you're doing a bunch of these. Then I make a corn stock with the cobs and some fresh thyme. It's a simple way to extract just a bit more flavor from these guys. We also had some leftover brownie cake from that dinner a few nights ago, and instead of letting that go to waste, I break them down into smaller pieces and bake them at 250 degrees until they're completely dried out. After about 30 minutes of boiling, I strain the corn stock. There's not much flavor you can get after that. And in my heavy bottom pot, I just sweat some diced onions and celery in a bit of butter. When they're fully sweated down, I add sliced garlic and let that toast in the oil before adding my corn. As always, be careful not to burn your garlic. It'll ruin the whole soup. Sweat that corn and then add the corn stock. A bit of almond milk to make it slightly creamy, and so it's easier on my client's stomach. But if I was making this at home or in a restaurant, I would use cream or whole milk, and probably a ton of butter. We've been getting weekly shipments of Copper River King salmon, so I seasoned it with their favorite combination: salt, salt, garlic powder, and onion powder, rubbed with a bit of oil to prevent it from sticking onto the grill. Once the brownie cake is all dried out, I let it cool down, throw it into a blender, and then I have these chocolate crumbs that I used to hold ice cream onto a plate without it moving around. Now I let the corn cook for just a few more minutes, and then I blend until completely smooth. Strain it out to get rid of any rogue skins. If you're going for a smooth soup, just strain it. Just always strain it. It's a good habit to have. I wanted a touch more umami in it, so I seasoned it with a bit of that matsutake white soy, and it's ready to go. Then I grilled the salmon, which is the preferred method of cooking. And for our veg, I sauteed some yellow zucchini, and once they had some color, I added some sun gold tomatoes to the pan with a bit of salt. Then I lowered the heat and let the zucchinis finish cooking and just gently blister the tomatoes. I still want them to hold their shape. And to finish the veg, I hit it with that Italian salsa verde that I made for the chicken. One of my favorite ways to utilize this besides as a sauce is to spruce up roasted vegetables. It brightens them up and really brings them to life. You can add it to almost any roasted or grilled vegetable and it's really going to elevate them. To plate, I spooned the roasted zucchini and tomato mix with the salsa verde, the grilled salmon, and put the corn soup into the cup. I'd normally marry the two together in one beautiful plate and probably add some nice corn kernels, small diced sourdough croutons for texture, but they like it separate. A light early dinner. Did you know that if you have problems with sandy, crunchy scallops, you can actually rinse them? Everyone knows that the secret to a proper sear on a scallop is heavily dependent on how dry they are, so it's usually not recommended that you put your scallops in water. But sometimes you just receive scallops that have sand embedded in them and no one wants to bite into a sandy scallop. So if I absolutely have to, I'll grab my scallops, remove the foot, and gently swish them around in ice cold water. Just enough to loosen up any sand. Lightly squeeze out some of that water and then really pat them dry with paper towels. Then the usual process. I salt them as if I'm about to cook them, place them on a few layers of paper towels, and then top them with a few more layers of paper towels as well, gently pressing on them to grab any more moisture. The salt will continue to pull out any more water as they sit, and the paper towels will keep absorbing it. I like to let them sit in the fridge like this for at least a few hours to get them as dry as possible. For my client's light dinner, I wanted to use up the last of the farmer's market vegetables that were left, which were corn and sugar snap peas. I got a few slices of bacon that I diced and started rendering in a cold pan with just a little bit of water. The water will help the bacon cook evenly and the bacon will crisp up as the water evaporates. I pull out the bacon so that they stay crisp and use that bacon fat to fry up some sliced shallots. Before those shallots finish, I get my scallops going. Hot pan, hot oil, scallops down and let those get golden brown. Do not flip until they are the color that you want. Because of all that drying I did, they still get a proper sear even with the water bath. And since I'm frying so many at once in a pan, I pull them out as they finish searing and then throw in some butter and get it browning. Throw the scallops back in, unseared side down, then do a quick baste to slightly cook them. Scallops should be barely warmed past raw in the center, in my personal opinion. Into the shallots, I throw in the sugar snap peas, corn, and just gently saute those to cook, but keep them still just a bit crisp. Pull them off the heat, toss with some of the leftover Salmon sauce to brighten it up, season with salt, and that's the corn salad. I give it a final toss with that crispy bacon and plate the corn and scallops. Then squeezing some fresh lemon juice to finish it off. A light dinner basically made with leftover ingredients.